Hi, my name's Hannah Gibson, and this is my video reflection for my English portfolio. What I learned from this particular project was I can definitely say how to write a professional memo that is APA sourced. Two things that I had no idea how to write a memo before, and I was sort of vaguely familiar with APA citing, but I was never really properly taught or corrected ever in high school or college, my previous college experience. So I think that was definitely useful. And I learned how to write an annotated bibliography, which had a lot of analysis in it. And I found that process to be really useful because I was able to cut out some things that probably weren't necessary. Future improvements of this project, it's pretty good. I mean, I can tell that it's probably been perfected over the years because it's very methodical and straightforward. But one thing that another class I had at the same time that also had a professional portfolio due was there was an outline due for that assignment, and I found that really useful to start making a rough draft, and I ended up doing it in this project anyways, even though it wasn't due. So if you wanted, that was something you can consider, although it's pretty well constructed. And I would definitely advise people to look at the rubrics because rubrics definitely seem to be pretty much just guides. Very useful. Institutional and course outcomes were met by this project just by doing them. It was a really great practice. It was completely dependent on information literacy. You had to find a good, not just one, but many good and reliable sources. You had to analyze them. Who were they written by? Does this information qualify for what you're trying to communicate? Is it necessary? Does it correlate with your audience and what you're trying to say? So that was great practice, and these outcomes are sort of combined, if you probably know that already. Relational learning was one thing that I definitely felt was used in my process because I really had this big picture Medicare type problem, and I had to relate it to everyday work at a nursing home that I work at, and I was really able to do that, and I was really happy about that because that was really my own goal, was to understand it, to understand my effects on it, because I don't have a lot of political weight to throw around or anything. I can't really affect it in that way, at least not yet. But seeing everyday things, inflation of this healthcare market, don't go to an ER if you can really go to a clinic, something like that. The oxygen example is a totally real example where I know of a resident who we were giving her oxygen even though she didn't need it because her daughter would, throw a fit. But nobody sat down with that daughter and talked to her about it. And it's not really my place as a CNA, but as a nurse it will be. And so I hope to promote that kind of, I think it's definitely going to help me with my understanding my place in my career and being that teacher for people in Fullerton. And it gives me some knowledge, obviously. And in that way, it was a lot of quantitative and scientific reasoning by evaluating my information that I received and then translate it into my life and into a way that could be measured. And I feel like I participated in a career growth and also personal growth because that was a personal goal for me to understand it. And while I'm sure there's parts that I'm still illiterate on as far as Medicare goes, I feel like I really did grow in my learning, and I'm pretty proud of that because that was a goal I've had long before I was in this class. And for course outcomes specifically, I created a concise memo proposal, something I'd never done before. I had to analyze the audience and the desired goals of what I was trying to communicate and really try to do that to the best of my ability. I had to be really effective in my communication. I felt like outlining really helped me do that. Constant, access and analysis and synthesis of research. A lot of the things of the sources that I was planning to start out with didn't end up in my final sources, and I had to go find some more because the more I got into the project, the more I realized some of them were rather either not necessary or just not as good as they could be. Like they could be supplemented for another better research source. And that required a lot of critical thinking in itself, just constant reanalysis, and annotated bibliographies help for that a lot. And one great outcome from the course was learning what kind of in-text citing should you use. Should you use a paraphrase? Should you summarize? Or should you quote? And my thought process was, if it's something where if you sacrifice a couple words or change it, is it really going to change the message? You know, is it that one phrase that really sums up something? Then, you know, I would consider that best to quote it. And otherwise, you know, paraphrase or summarize, which is the main form of citation that I used. I think that this portfolio project helped us to achieve dependability as far as a workplace capability, in the fact that you had certain dates that were due, something was due a certain date, and you were dependent on to turn it in if you want to succeed. And in that way, that was good. And then also, more specifically to my project, I assumed the role of the teacher for my proposal was to my fellow staff and peers, and I really took that seriously, even though it's sort of a fake situation and they'll probably never see it. I really felt that dependability on me as to give the staff a real example of how they can affect healthcare prices. And so in that way, I feel like my dependability was tested or challenged, I guess. For my specific workplace capability that I want to single out, I really want to single out communication, because I feel like this portfolio project really tested my communication skills as far as what does this person need to know, what does this person need to relate to. They need all this information, or could they do with a little bit less? And how am I going to communicate with them? What kind of vocabulary am I going to use? You know, basically I was communicating to the nursing staff, so I made all my real life examples very relatable to them, where they wouldn't really be relatable to the food service staff at my facility, because they don't administer oxygen and they don't administer these nursing cares. So it was really to them. So that really utilized the course outcomes and institutional outcomes of really analyzing who you're speaking to and what your desired goals are. I think this will impact my career because I learned how to write a memo, which is cool. And I'll definitely use that in my nursing career, because that's a very big way of how nurses communicate. I don't know if they all use that specific formulation of it, but if they do, then I'm well set up to succeed in that kind of communication. And also, I think that it's really important when you're in nursing and communicating to keep only what's necessary. Because you can't give certain information out. You have to make sure that you only give what's necessary to them as healthcare providers, or to whoever you're communicating with. And B, because nurses don't have a lot of time. Very typically understaffed type of population, and I'm very familiar with that, and I'm very familiar with being communicated to from nurses, because my job is to do tasks that nurses delegate to me. So I am very familiar with, the brevity of it and necessity of it, and really needing to have the focus on what needs to be focused on, because other things can be distracting or detract from the true focus. So it will definitely help my career to practice like I have been for this class. So thank you. Before I say goodbye, I just wanted to mention the importance of technological literacy for this project and the whole course, really, because I relied 100% to use technology to get my sources. I used the Bryant and Stratton Virtual Library, which in itself guarantees sort of that you can trust the source, I guess, in a sense, but they also have editorials and things like that that aren't necessarily the best for research. So it's not the end all be all, but I really feel like I got a good sense of what kind of sources are valuable in a research context, like educational, like .edu or .gov, possibly .org, depending on the organization. You know, you really have to look at what, if you're reading a research study, who paid for the research? Is it the drug company that's producing it, or is it the FDA or something like that? I don't know if they fund research, but you get what I'm saying. So I think that that is really important research and really can make all the difference. You know, if you're quoting some political lobbyist group in your research paper trying to say that this is not biased, that's going to be very misguided, and you're probably going to say something that isn't very educated in that context. But at the same time, you know, you could be writing a paper that is having you research two different sides of a debate. So in that sense, I mean, blogs would be good, or some opinion editorial stuff like that would be good, because you get a really good sense of where each side is coming from and the emotions behind that, if they're being honest, I guess. So it really just depends. You have to be smart, and I mean, technological literacy is obviously very important.